Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys today, sharing some insights about the full moon in Scorpio. I have a few things that I want to share about this full moon in Scorpio, which again, I hope gives you some different information to everything else that's out there. And let's just get straight into it. So today's presentation or reading is primarily on this full moon in Scorpio, which is occurring on the 18th and 19th of May 2019. The full moon will be at 27 degrees of Scorpio and the sun will be at 27 degrees of Taurus. So a full moon is always the sun and the moon directly opposite each other. The moon's light is getting her light from the sun because they're directly opposite each other. Most of us are aware that a full moon generally illuminates, highlights, and brings things into our conscious awareness, essentially. The full moon is an energy of Libra, you could say, okay? Libra is always about two bodies, entities, spaces directly opposite each other, right? Aries is the singular standing point where you're just standing there on your own, so to speak, very similar to a conjunction. When you are looking at a conjunction, which is two planets being together, they are, right by their side, but next to each other, right? So you can't look to your right or to your left necessarily with a conjunction. You can feel the intensity of the energy. It's very, very potent, but you can't see what's going to be born out of that energy. And the opposite to that is the full moon, which is an opposition aspect. And the opposition is in the same way I'm looking at you right now and you are looking at me. We are directly opposite each other. That is a full moon experience. So the full moon holds that Libran quality in that aspect. However, this full moon is in Scorpio, and first of all, I just want to say that the general sort of themes of what Scorpio represents are going to be, a very big part of this full moon in Scorpio. So what are the themes? The themes are, incredibly intense emotions rising. The experience of needing to purge very deep emotions or experiences, suspicion, jealousy, betrayal, the sense of empowerment or disempowerment. These are all themes of Scorpio. The theme of abandonment, that's another very strong theme with Scorpio. Powerlessness, I already said that. So it's always important to kind of hold those key words or key themes or key frames when you're looking at any archetype, really. So in this case, we're looking at the moon, which is always representative of our physical body as well, because the moon is literally, it's the container, that holds everything for us internally. So the moon is a feminine quality, feminine principle. The full moon always brings things into illumination. The sign Scorpio adds that depth quality, that investigative quality, that transformational quality, the dying rebirth quality and theme. These are standard sort of themes that this full moon in Scorpio will bring up. This full moon in Scorpio does have some reasonably good aspects, though, in terms of the actual chart, and I'll bring that up in a moment. But what I really kind of wanted to highlight today is that, see, this full moon is, it's going to highlight really what started. I mean, there's longer sort of timelines that we can go to in terms of last year, but let's just stick to the current or the very near past, as in 2 weeks ago when we had the new moon in Taurus. So the new moon in Taurus was when the sun and the moon were together in Taurus, and that energy within itself was a fairly or actually a very strong earthy energy, right? So in terms of what people were looking to, and now I did a video and I approached it from an esoteric level when I did the new moon in Taurus. So please watch that if you want to get some more information out of that, because you can actually add this or add that video and the information that was offered there and connect it, make the connections to what I'm going to share with you today. Even though I'm not approaching this video from an esoteric level, I decided to approach it from a goddess level. And the reason I've done that is because A, the moon is a goddess. She's the lunar goddess. And B, I found that there's an asteroid going to be conjunct this particular full moon. Now, this asteroid has a very, very interesting story and mythology. Her name is Cassandra, and it's spelled Kasandra. Now that I've said that, I'm actually going to put that in the title, so that wasn't really necessary. So it's the asteroid goddess Cassandra, number 114. Someone did ask me once, why is there a number next to an asteroid when you talk about it, when you make reference to it? The number is just, it doesn't mean anything. It's just that the number that a body is given when it's actually discovered astronomically in the heavens. So the 114 really doesn't bear any, not that I'm aware of, any major significance. It's just a way of identifying a particular body. So this particular asteroid at the moment is transiting at, on the day of the full moon, which is, as I said, on the 18th and 19th of May. This asteroid is going to be at 29 degrees of Scorpio. So it's literally just a couple of degrees from being exactly conjunct this full moon. Now, I think this is very, very, very interesting. And the reason I say that is because her story in myth ends in tragedy. Unfortunately, it does end in tragedy. But, look, when you look at these archetypes in their mythology, you will see that there is a lot of tragedy that occurs in myth, in these beautiful archetypes and characters, and that stems from basically Greek mythology and the Roman mythology as well. Sometimes it can be quite harsh, and it's not to be taken literal. It's really about understanding the symbology behind it, right? So her story very quickly was that she was a daughter of a king. She hung out in one of Apollo's temples, and one of the gods there became obsessed with her and was trying to, lure her into his space, into his field, whatever. She wasn't interested in him. He tried then to lure her by offering her the gift of prophecy. And she still didn't fall for him. So the story goes that he spat in her mouth. That sounds pretty disgusting, right? But he spat in her mouth, and he said to her that she will forever now speak the truth as a result of this, but no one would actually believe her. So it's a very interesting myth. In the end, she was killed. As I said, it ends in tragedy. But leaving that aside, although there's so much richness out of that myth that we can get in terms of understanding what she represents. And it is said that she represents issues around belief and credibility, trustworthiness, judgment about whether to believe others, prophetic gifts, and foreknowledge, offering and counsel, and rejection of advice. So they are the core themes that she represents. Now, her energy is very Scorpio in a lot of ways, really, in terms of what she represents, because prophetic gifts and prophetic ability we can really attribute to all three water signs, because water is the essential quality that really connects to prophetic abilities, right? As in psychic, clairvoyant abilities. So she has this gift about her. The trouble, though, is that because of this God figure who wanted her so badly, and she didn't want him, even though he gave her the gift of prophecy, it was a curse, because she had the gift of prophesizing and seeing truth in everything that she, would put her mind to, or her eyes to. But the problem was that people would not believe her. So this energy is very strong with this full moon because she's right there conjunct the actual full moon. So I guess this full moon to me really, and actually before I unpack that a little bit more, I just want to say as well that this full moon is opposite Mercury, okay, because the sun is conjunct Mercury during this full moon. Now, Mercury is known as the messenger of the gods. We know that Mercury has to do with communication, information, knowledge, speaking, and so forth. But he was the messenger of the gods, and Mercury is a very, very interesting planet, actually, and sometimes not understood in his totality, I think. Being a messenger of the gods meant that Mercury was able to travel between the higher worlds and the lower worlds, so the higher planes and the lower planes. And he was able to exist in both. Hence, he was the messenger of the gods. So he would take messages from the lower earthy levels, and he would take those messages up into the gods, into the higher streams, or into what we could say is the unconscious as well, the underworld, which is Pluto, right? So when Mercury is emphasized in, for example, the way he is here during this full moon, he's got some very important message to give us. The question is, what is the message? Now, the message is going to be obviously very unique for every single individual, because what I need to hear, or the message that I need to receive, is going to be very different to what you need to hear and receive, naturally, because we are all unique and we are all evolving on our own path and so forth. The point, though, is that the symbolism is there. Once you understand the symbolism, you can translate it and relate it to your own self, which connects to your personal circumstances, whatever they may be. So the first thing is, obviously, you need to know where this full moon lands in your chart, the sun and the moon, and the sun is conjunct Mercury. So it'll be across two different houses in your birth chart. It'll be where you've got Scorpio, and it'll be where you've got Taurus. So this is very easily relatable to the new moon 2 weeks ago in terms of what was planted, what seed, because a new moon is always planting seeds, right? We know that. It's just the thing that we have going every single month when we have a new moon. It's an opportunity, though, but, nothing necessarily falls out of the sky. So all these vibrations are taking place. The symbolism is there. But in terms of how things manifest for you or for me or for anybody, it's all about our own intentions and consciousness that's connected to these vibrations, and, what we're plugged into, what we tune into, and what sort of conscious intentions we have as a result as well. So, whatever you started a couple of weeks ago is possibly coming to total illumination now. Now, that can be really intensely painful, or it can be incredibly transformative. Anything to do with Scorpio is, although it is Scorpio and Pluto, agent of transformation, transformation does not come like a walk in the park. It never does. We have to be able to die to something, to really purge something, to really remove something of ourselves, as it were, something that we're attached to. That's a very good word, actually, for this vibration, which started 2 weeks ago with the new moon. As I said in that new moon video, we're dealing very much with the personality of attachments, right? Because we're talking about Taurus, which is the sign that is the most strongest in terms of attachment, right? So Scorpio being the shadow to Taurus, literally it's the shadow. Every sign and its opposite, they are each other's shadow, literally. Every polarity, right? Every two signs. So the Scorpio full moon is really now, it's bringing to the consciousness of you, what is it that you perhaps really struggled with when it came to the practical world. You know, a couple of weeks ago, things that were going on in your life in that practical way, and in terms of attachments as well, and being able to let go of things. Because Taurus hangs on. It's the there's this expression, the Rock of Gibraltar, right? That's Taurus. That's, you know, it's incredibly powerful in staying with something, which at certain times in life, that's a very important process and very necessary. But at other times when we need to let go of certain attachments, whether it's a person, a job, a situation, a car, a house, whatever, we as human beings from that personality level, we struggle with letting things go, because the personality is insatiable in wanting to hang on and wanting more and more and more. So this Scorpio archetype, this Scorpio full moon energy, really enables us to get into that space of eliminating, right? It's an elimination process, but it's a very intensified elimination process. So the element of Cassandra, the asteroid goddess, being conjunct this moon, because she has the quality of her of prophetic gifts and talents, the issue also, though, connected to her was whether somebody is being truthful or honest to you, right? Whether they are trustworthy. You know, it may be a situation that you're in at the moment that has a big question mark around it. Well, this full moon is going to let you know what the hell's really going on with it, if it already hasn't happened. And the issue of your own judgment on situations as well is going to be very, very critical during this time. But I really like that Cassandra is here with this full moon, because I love the quality of her that represents the prophetic gifts. And because Scorpio, as I said before, all water signs have the prophetic quality to them. But Scorpio, you know, really sort of hones in, really gets into the most deepest of deepest levels of your unconscious. Now, I just want to also say, and this is an important point to note and observe when you're looking at the secondary progressed moon particularly, but even when you're looking at the transiting moon as well. Now, this full moon is in the water sign Scorpio. We know that. When you have the moon in earth or water, earth and water take us into the inner dimensions. Even though earth is connected to the earth plane and this version of reality and the practical, you know, experiences and realms and structures, earth is also very much our senses, our sensuality, our body. And it really does take us into those inner planes as well. So earth and water can generally bring in this, let's use this full moon as an example. With this full moon, because it's in a water sign, the illumination that's going to come really is going to be from the deepest place within your own self. So although you might hear something from somebody, or you may receive a message from somebody, it's going to be your own inner knowing and depth that's going to make sense of it, right? Do you get what I'm saying? It's like water and earth produce the qualities of us either receiving blessings or gifts or knowledge or wisdom or deeper understanding from our own inner self. There's nothing more powerful than that. In contrast to air and fire signs, now air and fire is movement and action. Air is movement, you know, it's circulating, it's information, knowledge, it's conversation, sharing, right? Fire is action. It's stepping into things, taking that action. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about water and earth, sun in Taurus, moon in Scorpio. So the energy really takes us very deeply into our own self, provided we're able to go there and even want to go there. So the benefit of this full moon is a total illumination of an incredibly important and powerful message that can have a prophetic quality to it because of Cassandra being conjunct this full moon in Scorpio. And let me just bring up the chart actually, just to, what have I done there? Okay. Okay, so this is the chart of the full moon in Scorpio. This is done for Melbourne, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So for us, it's going to be the 19th of May. For a lot of you, it's going to be the 18th of May. Nevertheless, 18th, 19th, those 2 days are going to be very intense with this energy. So again, don't worry about where everything is located because this is done from my location. Your location may be very different to mine. 90% it's going to be. So regardless of that, the thing that you need to really look at is where is this full moon actually in your own chart, right? That's the first thing, as I said before. So you can't see Cassandra here because solar fire doesn't actually have, I don't think she's there as a symbol in the list of parts that in terms of what you can add and subtract to a chart. So it doesn't matter. Just imagine that she's sitting just over here at 29 degrees of Scorpio. So she's right there conjunct that moon. So, you know, again, I can't emphasize this enough. Moon in Scorpio is going to take you into such deep, intense emotional experiences anyway. And naturally, that's going to relate to whatever is going on in your life during this time, right? And Scorpio is like, I've said this before, it's like the eagle eye, right? It's that ability to imagine the eye of an eagle. I don't know if you know much about eagles, but they're an incredible species in terms of their vision. They have this incredible power with their vision and distance and depth and how much they can actually see. Well, the eagle is another symbol for Scorpio, as is a snake, as is a scorpion, right? So just imagine that kind of vibration, that kind of energy. So when the moon is in the sign of Scorpio, it's about accessing and using that eagle eye to actually hone into much greater depths of what you actually need to understand more of about yourself and your life, and also what you need to purge and release and remove. It's always about purging. Scorpio is always about purging. We have to let something die. The Scorpio energy and vibration it's not going to bring the transformation if we can't let go of something. There's always something to let go of, right? The other thing that I wanted to point to as well is that this Saturn-Pluto conjunction up here in Capricorn, which is very, very, very powerful for this year and next year. We had a taste of it last year as well. It's about a 3-year period where this conjunction is very present in the cosmos. And I'm actually going to do a separate video just on this conjunction because it's really it's so important that it deserves its own video, right? Its own session. So I'm going to do that probably next. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make was that fortunately this Saturn-Pluto forms a conjunction to this moon, and that's that's very, very helpful in terms of what we're dealing with this full moon. Because see, the full moon is not we're not necessarily making things happen. We're actually seeing the result and the fruit of what we have previously tried to make happen. And as I said, we can go back into last year, for instance, you know, when we had the last full moon in Scorpio. But I just wanted to keep it very now, right? So I want to think about the new moon that happened 2 weeks ago. So this full moon it's a time where you're literally seeing the harvest, you know, the result of what you've been doing essentially. And there's several layers to that. There's always the external layer in terms of what you are consciously trying to implement or create or further progress or eliminate, or whatever the case may be. And then naturally, there are always the much deeper unconscious levels within us that are operating out of our control, actually. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Most of our behavior is operating and is dominated through our unconscious psyche, our unconscious intentions. So we are very, very complex beings, really. So this full moon in Scorpio, it can access layers that have to do with your external life in terms of what it's going to bring to your awareness, what it's going to eliminate in your consciousness. And look, it's not going to be easy, but it's not going to be the end of the world, all right? Because there's some nice kind of aspects. So I really like that this Saturn-Pluto is sextile, because that softens a little bit of the intensity of Scorpio. And Pluto is the ruler to Scorpio. So Pluto is sextiling the moon, meaning that there is some support, right? Some supportive energy with Pluto, right, to the moon and Saturn as well. Now, that Saturn-Pluto conjunction is one of the most difficult, most challenging combination of planets and aspect that anyone could ever have, in my opinion. As I said, I'm going to do a separate video. But the fact that it's sextiling this full moon, I think adds some support in terms of what you're actually going to be dealing with, what you're going to face. Okay, so that's a good thing. As I said, Cassandra is conjunct this full moon, so just give some thought to that, because, again, any body that is that we become aware of, essentially, because if you've never heard of Cassandra, now she's coming into your consciousness, into your awareness. So now you can look at this full moon with the awareness and consciousness of her presence right there with this full moon. And what does her presence symbolize? It can symbolize your own prophetic gifts and talents and abilities to tune into much deeper truths within your own self. It can also symbolize not being believed, or questioning the judgment of others as well. So it can bring up a couple of different themes. The other very interesting thing that I wanted to mention, which is not necessarily so much about this full moon, but it's still there because it's in this chart and it is forming a sextile to this full moon. But I will do a whole session on this when I do the Pluto-Saturn video, because this is an asteroid, goddess asteroid, that interestingly enough is exactly conjunct the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. She's actually at 19 degrees of Capricorn, so she hasn't gotten to being exact to Pluto and Saturn, but she's getting there. So it's Persephone, and Persephone, for those of you that don't know, is the daughter of Ceres, and she was the goddess that was abducted by Pluto into the underworld. Now, the fact that she's there forming a conjunction to Saturn-Pluto is incredibly, incredibly valuable and incredibly telling in terms of what she's going to bring up. Her myth is so fascinating. I've always been fascinated by her myth, but, I have her conjunct actually my Mars, and she's trine my Pluto, so she's a very strong figure in my own chart. And, as I said before, when you're trying to understand an archetype, whether it's a sign or a planet or an asteroid, it's really about understanding the symbolism, making sense out of that. Now, Persephone, in my opinion, what she symbolizes is that part within us that is so deeply unconscious that the only way we can access it is if we go into the underworld, which is where she went. She was abducted, right? She was abducted by Pluto, taken into the underworld against her will. So it speaks to that part within us that fears or is terrified of accessing and going into perhaps those deeper parts of our psyche, of the unconscious component within us. But we have to do that And we do it whether we are conscious of it or not, because we do it every night when we go to sleep, and we just let go, right? When you go to sleep, you don't say to yourself, I'm going to let myself go to sleep now, and I'm not going to control anything, and I'm going to control when I want to wake up. Now, that's not at all what happens. We decide to go to bed, and there's this incredible magical process, which is consciousness, that works our entire organism, our entire body, our breathing, everything. You don't control your breath when you're sleeping, do you? So that experience every single night is an experience of dying, symbolically, right? It's the experience of letting go and going into a space where you completely surrender and let go, right? That's a very Scorpio and Pisces energy, right? So this Persephone being conjunct Saturn and Pluto at the moment is really trying to bring into the consciousness of the collective what we actually need to face very, very, very deeply within ourselves. But as I said, I will unpack that in much further detail when I do the Saturn-Pluto video. She's a part of this, though, part of this full moon, because she's forming a sextile well, actually, no, she's a bit wide for a sextile, so disregard that. But the fact that she's still present, because she's present in this chart, she's present with Pluto and Saturn. So again, there's the Scorpio, Pluto, Hades, underworld myth really coming to life with Persephone being conjunct Saturn, Pluto at the moment. What else have we got going? So there's, as we can see here, Mars has entered Cancer for this full moon. So you can see Mars is in Cancer. Moon is in Scorpio. So what I'm pointing to is earth and water. Okay, there's lots of earth and water. There's a bit of fire there too. Moon in water, Saturn, Pluto in earth, South Node in earth, Black Moon, Lilith in water, Neptune in water, Uranus, Venus in earth, Mercury, Sun in earth, Mars in water, Juno, North Node in water. So the majority of the vibration for this particular full moon is earth and water. And that's an important key note, because as I said earlier, earth and water, in terms of what you're trying to cultivate or understand more of, is going to be gifted from within you, not from out there. That's an important point. If it was air and fire, then it'd be more about action and movement, but it's not. It's earth and water. There's not really any other harsh sort of aspects to this full moon, which is good, because I think the Scorpio full moon within itself is such an intense moon, so we don't really want some intense sort of squares to it that can just be incredibly overwhelming, depending on what's going on in your life as well. There's 7.5 billion people on the planet, and everyone's having an entirely different experience and at an entirely different stage in their life. I had a client recently who lost her mother, for instance. So this full moon in Scorpio is probably going to be incredibly intense for this particular individual. So there's millions of examples in terms of what's going on in our life right now. But that's why you need to look at yourself, your chart, and where this full moon lands. But my message with this full moon is that beautiful Cassandra being conjunct this full moon, and what prophecies can she bring to you that you need to actually realize at this point in your life. And Mercury being conjunct the sun, as I said before, Mercury is the messenger of the gods. So he's got a very strong position in this full moon. He's got a message to give as well. What is the message that you need to be receiving right now? So prophetic expression, Mercury receiving messages, they're really working together, aren't they? So think about that and how that might relate to you at this point in your life. And feel free to make some comments below, or ask any questions if you need to. Let me just see if there was anything else that I wanted to say. Yeah, that's really all I wanted to say about this full moon. Overall, it's a very, very intense energy, vibration that holds incredible gifts of prophecy for you if you are open, receptive, and willing to receive. So I'll leave this video here for today. I just wanted to make it relatively quick. I hope it's informative for you, and I hope you're able to connect to my message. And again, thank you so much for subscribing and for your comments and questions. I always appreciate them and try to get back to you guys as best as I can and as quickly as I can as well. And I did mention in my last video that I'm going to be creating an online course, and that is definitely going to go ahead. I'm just now starting to put my building blocks together, as it were, and figuring it all out and hoping to have it out as soon as I possibly can, because I know that a lot of you will really, really benefit from it. A lot of you will really, really enjoy it, and it will be for both beginners and people who are more advanced, because I feel, as I said in my previous video, that I've got some material to bring that's pretty unique and not necessarily accessible through a lot of the books. So sending you much love and blessings for this incredibly intense full moon in Scorpio, and may the prophecies that come to you bring beautiful light of illumination and consciousness into your life and your being at the moment, and whatever that, in terms of whatever that is for you, whatever it is you need at the moment. Much love and blessings, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.